All right, Ron Newcomb here with the Indie Coach podcast. I'm here with my buddy, and not a new buddy, it is a true buddy, Tom Malloy. We've now been friends for a number of years.
Yeah.
He's come to DC a couple times. I was very fortunate enough to where Tom also brought me in on a project. Tom has a tenacity and just a desire to help other filmmakers. And I admittedly have been coming out talking about some of the things that are out there, and I won't pull you into this muddy water a little bit, Tom, but there's just some people or companies over the years that I thought were going to be extremely beneficial to the community, and really they're not as helpful as I thought that they might be.
Mm.
And I am very just proud to be able to say that everything that I've ever known about you, you have not been that way. You have always been extremely helpful. You've always thrown out great information. You overgive, over deliver. And the most important thing of it all, you're actually in the trenches doing the work.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many
That's a big
people
thing.
that they're not in the trenches, and you are in the trenches. And I just so appreciate that about you. But I also appreciate that you're trying to also pull people up and get their story told as well. And
Yeah.
so you've always responded to my emails, my texts, my phone calls. So Tom, with people that might not know a little bit of your background, to just kind of tee it up here, how did you begin your journey and what kind of drew you into storytelling and filmmaking?
Gosh. Well, I'd always was wanted to be in the movie business since I was a kid. And initially it was an actor. And the quick story goes, I did a movie back in 1997 called Gravesend, where we shot it on the streets of Brooklyn, improvised the whole movie. We ended up getting Oliver Stone to put his name on the movie. And I was one of I think it was the second biggest role. And when that didn't make me into a household name, I just decided to learn every other aspect of the business. And so now the strinking of the story is that now gosh, I produced 27 movies. I've written, I think 30 something screenplays, and I've option sold and made into movies 25 of those screenplays. I wrote the book Bankroll, which was the bestseller book on film financing. Now I own a site called Filmmaking Stuff, I co-own, where we teach film financing and film distribution. And I also own Glasshouse Distribution. I started 10 years ago, and we now have over 200 titles that we've licensed. And we are go to all the markets. I'll be in Cannes next week for I think, my 12th Marché de Film. And yeah, and at the same time, still doing acting projects here and there and writing as always. But basically, all I do is movies. I mean, I'd been sitting at this one spot today, except for when I ate lunch. Other than that, it's all movies. And I was trying to license a big animation title right now, and for big money that we'll put into theaters next year. And there's always new projects on the table. So yeah, I did try to do it all.
Yeah, no, you definitely do, man. And I love that, just your work ethic. I've got to see you in real time, and I know how hard of a worker you are, kind of the hardest worker in the room kind of
Yeah.
situation. And you pull people into and you bring good leaders, but you've been a writer, actor, producer, coach, all those things.
Yeah.
What kind of is the main thing that you'd like to identify most with now? Is it, I know you've got the acting pull. Is it acting? What's kind of the thing you like most?
Well, I honestly do like it all. There's aspects that I love about producing, aspects I love about acting, and aspects I love about writing, and even directing. I did one movie, directed the one we worked on. So,
Yeah.
um, but I say, lately it's been more producing. And so it's just sometimes there's ebbs and flows of things. And as a producer, I've gotten more and more experience and gotten more and more powerful because actors, even though I know my talent and what I can bring and I got my A game, there are a lot of actors and they're everywhere and everybody can kind of be an actor, but they can't be a producer. And so that kind of sets you apart. I guess in many ways. And so yeah, so I would say that I'm leaning towards producing, but at the same time, you never know what's going to ebb and flow coming going forward. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you kind of have to keep all the plates spinning, and you got to be ready to jump on the field. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
they call you in the game, you got to be ready to
There
rock.
you go. Bring the game. Yep. Yep.
So you've raised over, I believe, $25 million is the number. You've raised over that for indie films. What would you say is the biggest or one of the biggest myths about raising money from people? What's a myth
That's a
that?
good question. Yeah, and that number is probably way more now. I haven't updated it. I have to kind of go back and see because there are some recent projects that I've not included in that. But as far as raising money, a myth, well, there's a lot of myths surrounding it. One is that it's easy. It's never easy. But the key is it's not easy. If I was trying to raise $20,000 for a micro budget or something or a short film, that's just as hard as raising 2 million. I don't feel that I've worked harder for the big money than I have for the little money. It's all the same. And the key, besides all the other stuff, is the persistence of just going forward. But also, look, the one thing that took me 15 years to realize is that you have to add more value to the project. That's it. That's the main answer to financing movies is get it to be a really valuable project, and investors just kind of appear because it's then of value to them. So, um, the myth, like I said, the myth is maybe that it's easy but maybe who knows? Maybe people don't feel that. Or there's another myth out there that I think some people say that the only producers can do it, and a person that on the street can't, which is not true at all. I think it's if you take the right steps, anybody can raise money for a movie.
Yeah, no, I believe that true too. And I think a lot of times maybe people in positions don't want that to be true, but
Yeah,
nevertheless, I think with the right training, right coaching, right mentor,
and right
the
hard work.
right
Yeah,
hard work,
yeah.
tenacity, the right story, boom, suddenly you're out there and you're pitching with passion. And that's really what investors invest in. The numbers
Mhm.
need to make sense, but investors, it's proven that they invest emotionally. For filmmakers starting out today, how would you recommend they approach private equity or soft money?
The first thing that I would say before you approach it is you got to prep the project to be ready. When I said you have to add value to it, this is what I mean. It has to be something that makes sense on paper and has value or IP or is a smart number, right? So the first thing, if somebody says, I got a project, I want to approach an investor, I'd say, all right, let's go back and look at this project. Like, what is the budget? Is it a feasible budget? Who's attached? What IP is behind it? How great is the script? Is it like your first draft or something that no one's read? And or if they do read it, they're going to be like, so all of those things have to be in place. I do this whole thing about the 5 steps to prepping. I do this webinar and I talk about that's what leads to it. So before you get in front of that private equity investor, you have to have all those, or else you're just burning relationships, and you're making them think you're an amateur. I've always used the story of, say you invited me, you said, Tom, I made a movie. And you talked me into coming down and seeing the screening, and it's 4 hours long, and the actors are looking at the camera, and there's no plot, it makes no sense, and it's just 4 hours of my life I'll never get back. In my mind, I've labeled you as an amateur. If 3 months from now you're like, Tom, I got another movie, I would make every excuse in the book. Oh, like, my great grandma died. Like I'd make all kinds of shit up just to not get in front of that because I put you in a box. And so
Yeah.
if an investor is putting you in a box of like, Ron's not a serious guy, you're not getting back in front of that person because they're not going to waste time. Their time is very important, just as anybody's time is, but they're not going to waste it on an amateur.
Yeah. Do you find that money is harder to find today, about the same? Is there any dynamic in today's landscape of filmmaking?
I think that the main dynamic comes from the market itself, whereas I mean I was preaching this back at the first edition of Bankroll in 2008, and it's gotten wider, meaning there's a hole in the middle. Like you have the studio projects that are when I first started, it was like studio movies were like 10 million and up, and indies were like 5 million and down, and there was a little hole. And then it just started expanding and expanding and pushing. And now that hole is like ridiculous. It's like 30 million and up is studio and 400,000 and under is indie film. And maybe even that is tough. Um, so the world of micro budgets and has come up because of the market itself not being able to support those bigger numbers. I've seen so many people make two, three, four, $5 million movies and make couple 100,000 at the most on the market end of selling it. So what I'm getting at is I think it's the same, but I think people need to be more realistic about their budgets. And many people are pulling budgets. Yeah, it's $6 million. It's like, where? Where did you pull that from? Or is this something that a line producer gave you?
Right.
5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. I just had a documentary come to me that had legitimately serious IP, and I really wanted to get involved, and I still might. But he was like, the budget is 780,000, and I'm like, for a documentary, man, that is just nuts. And I ended up getting a call with him and one of my TV company friends, and that TV company is extremely successful because they shifted before anybody else did and started making unscripted TV for like 250 to 300,000. Whereas all the bigger places were still trying to make them for 1 million, and 800 to 1 million or something like that for half hour to an hour of TV. All of them are out of business or going out of business. And so that's an issue. And that's something that you got to be very cognizant of.
Man, so yeah, I would love to hear kind of your honest, candid feedback, like you just gave right there, about the current landscape, because I want people to kind of hear this. Because so I get pitched quite a bit. I can only imagine how much you get pitched, and I mean it's probably all the time. And
Yes.
people are sending stuff over, and the first thing that jumps out at you is this crazy budget number. Like you mentioned, this $30 million budget number,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all they have is a top sheet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, do you realize like what you're asking and what liability you might even be putting on yourself by throwing that out there like that? But you go to all the markets. So I tell people that all the time. Like I say, I have a friend, he goes to the market, he's on the front lines. He
Yeah.
knows what buyers, true buyers, are actually putting out cash for.
Mhm.
If you're an indie filmmaker, what should you be targeting? What is kind of a realistic sweet spot, at least to get to phase one, which is break even, and then you
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
to,
And
to
then move.
revenue?
I think that a lot of it depends on the scope and size of the project and what you want to do with it, as far as the names that are involved in the project. In general, the best thing that I could ever say is you want exponential more value than the budget you spend. So with the sales company, we'll have movies come to us, and every once in a while a buyer will ask, "What was the budget of this movie?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know what the hell the budget was." And it's like we don't necessarily ask the filmmakers that because I've seen it both ways. I remember I had this great movie that we had called Driver X. It was one of my favorites we ever signed. Patrick Fabian from Better Call Saul. And it was IFC Sundance did it in US, and then we were doing international. And one day he told me the budget, and I was like, "Oh!" Like it was only like $100,000. I was shocked. I thought this movie was 3, 4 million at least. On the flip side of the coin, there was a movie that we had that I won't name, and we did well with it. We thought we were killing it on a VOD because I figured the movie was like 50, $60,000 movie, and we were making hundreds on it. And when we came to them and said, yeah, with joy, we've made this much, they were like, "Well, we expected this, in the millions." And it was like, "Wait, what did you make this for?" And then they said, I think they said 600,000. I was like, "What?" With no stars, no huge production value. I'm like, did that all go in your pockets? So like half of it, it's ridiculous. So there's no specific sweet spot, but I will say this.
Okay.
If you can make a movie in that micro budget range, which I would say like 100,000 and under, and make it look big. Because I've had people come up to me, "Yeah, I'm okay. I do micro budget." And the first question is like, "What is that?" They'll say, 800 grand. It's like, that's not micro budget. Or two, they'll say, "Yeah, I can do a micro budget. It's about a guy staring at a bathroom mirror the whole time, the whole 2 hours. This guy filming that guy." That's not, they got to be real movies.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you can make money. And the last thing I'll say about that is I had a random, my friend Scott Baker was just texting me this morning because he happened to be watching my movie, The Bigfoot Trap, which was on Next, which is a Showtime affiliate because we had sold it to Paramount Plus. The budget of that movie was $40,000. And a great director put it together, Aaron Mertez, and we sold it to Showtime, which is now Paramount Plus. We sold it to UK, Africa, Middle East Airlines, and it's like 40,000. We've made over maybe 130,000 on that movie, and it's like if that same movie cost 500,000, we would have a loss. But because we were able to pull it off for that little, we've tripled and maybe ultimately will quadruple our money on that movie.
Yeah. See, that's the way to do it, knowing the numbers.
Yeah.
Um, is there a particular genre that you're seeing that's attractive to buyers or?
The first word that comes out of their mouth every single time is action. Every single time we go to buyers, especially if they're new, "What are you guys looking for?" They go action, and then they go to everything else. And I don't know if it's alphabetical, but I think action in general sells because we've had a couple actions that weren't even that good, and we got sales from. So it's like I mean, we're heavy on our action. I'll be in Cannes next week for the Mouse Shaded Film, and it's like I believe the top 3 or 4 we have are action movies. So it works.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, it definitely works for a reason. So that's also what I've kind of heard as well is action.
Yeah.
Um, what do most indie creators get wrong when pitching their projects? Again, I know you get pitched all the time. Is there something that you can kind of point to that like, man, if they just were to get this right, it'd be helpful?
That's a good question. Well, there's one thing that I'll address is that when we're talking about just circling back to those micro budgets, if you no one cares about how much crew you have. That's a big thing that you have to understand. It's like no one cares. If I'm shooting a dinner table scene, and I've always used that as an example because there are not that many ways to shoot it. And that exact same scene could cost $2 million, if there's Tom Hanks and Brad Pitt at the table. Or it could cost 100,000 or 50,000 for just that one day, or it could cost $1,000 or less. The key is there are only so many ways to shoot it. And when it comes up on the screen, if it looks great and it's a dinner table scene, I don't care. I don't care if you had 70 crew. I don't care if you had one guy holding the boom and holding the camera. If it looks great, it looks great. And so sometimes I will encounter filmmakers that are like, "Well, I need this, I need that, and I need that," and it's like, "Do you though? Do you really need that? All that stuff? And how is that going to pay off?" When we were doing our movie "Ask Me to Dance," we were interviewing some people because it was at the time during COVID, and while we wanted to be safe, the ones that were super militant about it, we were rejecting because it was just like that money's never going to be seen. That the second we go and cut, and that's the last shot of the movie, all that money is flushed it down the toilet. See what I'm saying? And it's like, so that was very tough for me to accept. And I knew, obviously, you want to stay safe. You didn't want anybody to take it and the movie delayed, and that could have caused a problem. But at the same time, that was a very, like, a perfect example of stuff that I don't want to ever pay for because it's not going up on the screen. Now, in that case, we had to, but it's just it's very tough to think that look, all that matters at the end of the day is what the picture looks like. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree with that, and I felt that pain as well. If it's not going up on screen, man, that was
Yeah.
that was hard, but we powered through, which was cool.
Yeah.
Uh, so for packaging films, everyone says, do you have a name? Do you have a name? And I have stolen your quote, and it's basically it can't be, the guy from Game of Thrones seventh season,
Yeah.
in the background. It can't be that guy.
It's him. Yeah.
I think this is a Thomism. If you have to explain the person, who the person is, it's not really an A-lister,
100%.
right? It's not going to move the needle. Because really, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it doesn't matter if it's A, B, or C, who cares? But if
Yeah.
they move the needle on the sales front, that's really what you're after. And your packaging, and a lot of filmmakers don't realize this in the indie world, when you're packaging, it isn't just the actor, you also have the director, writer, and a name could even be a producer to help sway
Yeah.
things. Like you were
Oh yeah.
saying, you guys got Oliver Stone on there.
Hmm.
If you are the director and you also wrote it, that's two out of the three. So you
Hmm.
better get a name in the film.
Yeah.
How do you approach packaging a film that is actually going to sell? Do you lock in it's the chicken and the egg. Like I can't get
Yeah.
the money till I get the star, can't get the star till I get the money. Do you get a casting director and try to, make some offers? How do you
Mhm.
try to package a film?
Well, there's and by the way, I think to your point with the had I had said that do you have to explain the name? There's even some names you don't have to explain that you still shouldn't put. Like Eric Roberts is a perfect example. If I get one more person that it says, "Oh, we got stars in the movie," I go, "Who?" And they say Eric Roberts. It's like he'll do any movie. He'll do my, he'll do my commercial that I made for my bathroom. And so they're not, they're not always valuable. In fact, some of them are devalue your movie, but and nothing against him. He's a great actor. He just does 700 movies. You know, when you're putting it together, you have to look and go, all right, what's the budget of this movie? Who can I potentially afford? But look, I hate to say I've leveraged a lot of personal relationships. Like I did this movie, Dark Knight of the Soul, and I was friends with Kristana Loken, who was Terminator in Terminator 3, and or TX, I think was her name in the Terminator 3. And so we just became friends, and I gave her the script. And then Martin Cove was a friend of a friend, and I was Jesse, who was his son worked with us and asked me to dance. And so it was like, great, can we get your dad in this movie? And like, and then Jesse was in that movie too. And so I'm not going to say always, look, you need to have friendships with people, but that is, that helps. If you don't have those relationships, then yeah, what you suggested, bringing a casting director on who has those relationships. That's another example of where you got to be smart because the casting director situation is definitely not a situation where harder work gets the names at all. Um, I've heard that say, "Oh, we hired this cast director. Who's this person?" And well, they live in Indiana, but they're gonna bust their butt for this movie. No, it's have they cast stars before? Have they done movies of this caliber that or at least the stars that you're looking for? Like I have a big studio movie right now that we're trying to get going, the cast director Emmy for Shogun. You know what I mean? Which is
Oh, cool.
incredible. And so it's like that's gravitas and talent right there, so that they're going to get their calls picked up by the agents. So
Exactly.
yeah, I think so. I think hiring cast directors is a smart move, but it's got to be the right cast directors.
Yeah. Everybody's worth their kind of weight, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, so this is a great, I think, question for you to just, I think I know what the answer is, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk to it. Being on the distributor sales front, does star power still matter as much in today's landscape as it did before, or is concept or audience, um, just as important, or I don't know about more important, because I know star power is still something, but is star power still, does it still matter in today's economy?
Yeah, I think it does to a certain extent, but it's also audience too. It's if you tell me, let's go back to the explain the person or not explain the person, but if you tell me you got Joe Smith and I go, who's Joe Smith? And he go, oh, you don't know he's got 20 million followers on Instagram. And he said, that's value. You know what I mean? That's eyeballs. So those people can be valuable and placed in your project. So any uh, anything that has IP is where the value is, right? So look, if you're trying to get a project going, there could be three things. You could have money already, great, fantastic, that's value. You could have a star, that's value, or you could have some type of IP and eyeballs behind it. This documentary that came to me was based off of a YouTube channel, and they had millions of followers. So it was like, well, that's great. You already have a YouTube channel where you're doing these exposés and you want to make a documentary on that, fantastic. And so um, it could be any one of those things. And if you partner with the right people kind of going forward, that's just going to add more value again to that project. And partnering meaning get the actor hired or get like the director or the producer hired that has a name or the influencer that could only just help the project, just adds the value, which leads to the financing.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. What are the biggest mistakes you're seeing filmmakers making, not to try to call them out, but to try to learn from them and help them to get better at it when it comes to distribution specifically? What are some big mistakes there?
Well, I don't think that they ever consider that. I have this one filmmaker that's always pitching projects, and funny enough, he's pitching them to my investors because I brought these investors to him when he directed a movie for us, and it was like now he's trying to pitch them directly, but he's pitching them these projects that don't make any sense, and it's like if you don't understand the market side of it, how can you determine that that's a correct budget, right? And so, to me, my education came from going to the American film market. The first one I was at was the 2005. So this is 20 years later. I'm still going every single year, and like I said, 12 times in Cannes, Berlin. I think I'm at six or seven. MIPCOM, maybe four or five. So I go to all of them. I went to Film Art this year for the first time in Hong Kong. And when you see the market, the other side of it, that's when you can make the correct decisions. So, what I would say to filmmakers is that if you've never been to one of those markets that I just named, which the major three are EFM Berlin, AFM Santa Monica, or not Santa Monica, Los Angeles now, yeah, it's Century City, and then or Cannes, then Marché de Film, you don't understand the back end of it, and you really should. Um, on funny side note, on a TV note, and I'm not in the TV space at all, but one of my friends started an entire business by just going to MIPCOM and NatP, which are TV markets, and finding buyers and going, "What are you guys looking for?" And the second he got a couple answers where they said, we want this kind of show, he then just went out and made the show and supplied it for the buyers and started an entire company, and they're fairly huge now. And it's like, that's being smart.
Yeah, exactly. That's giving the market what it wants, not necessarily
Exactly. What they're
trying
going to
to
pay for it. Yeah.
create something, throw it over the wall, and pray it finds something.
Yeah.
How should an indie vet a potential distributor or sales agent? How should they vet and find them?
Great. That's a great question. I think that, well, those are two different things, vet and find them. But let me go to vet. Well,
Yeah.
find them, let me go first. And find them, yes, you could find them going to the markets and meeting them. But before you do that, you should be looking on Cinando, Cinando. Get a membership there, research them there, look them up, because you don't want to be pitching, a company that's doing crazy, raunchy horror movies on your faith-based movie. That's just stupid. And that'll happen sometimes. Like I had a friend that owned one of those companies, and he was getting pitches from people that don't have any reason to be pitching them because they're just blanket pushing them out to everybody. Vetting's different, and I always say, I remember reading this in a book once, and I go, oh God, yeah, that's right. That the practice of asking for references is moronic because no one's going to give you bad references, so don't ever do that. They're like, say, give us some references of films. They're going to give you three people that love them. You know what I mean? Like, and so I say, go to Sonando, go to IMDb Pro, find out who the producers are of these movies, and then reach out directly. And I can guarantee that they will be happy to tell you if they had a bad experience, and they'll also be happy to tell you if they had a good experience. So just kind of do your own homework on that distributor, and take things with a grain of salt. I mean, there are Facebook groups like distributors to stay away from, and knock on wood, I don't think we're in there, but there's always going to be somebody pissed off um, for some reason, like because their movie didn't make $1 million or something like that. So if there's one or two complaints, okay, that doesn't mean completely, avoid that distributor. But there are ones that are always appearing. I have two in my head right now that are always popping up on these chats, and it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you should stay away from those people, no matter what their sales pitch is to you. And so, just do your research and due diligence. So,
Yeah, I'm part of one of these Facebook groups, and I have to say, I started to defend one of the people, and
yeah,
I just got mauled. I mean, they just crucified me. And then the dude that runs the group, I reached out to him, was like, "Hey man, can I pitch like a company I had a really good relationship with? Like
yeah,
I had a good sales two
yeah.
times. I've had two really good sales agents that were really good." And he was like, "No." So I
Hilarious.
was like, "Wait a minute, this Facebook is just about
Just
complaining."
about shitting on people.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
great.
I'm
Which
like,
you never know.
you know,
I just did a video about that. Actually, I don't even know if it came out yet. It might come out today or Thursday. But it was like it was saying somebody will say, "Oh, so and so screwed me." So whatever distributor is, and I'll go, "Wait, tell me how."
yeah.
And 90% of the time, it's just they didn't make the money they thought they're going to make, and that's bullshit. Like that's not they did not screw you over. We've had movies that we pitched to 200 different buyers and got zero sales from them. That ain't on us. We have done our job. The buyers are not going to, if they don't like the movie, they're not going to buy it. But when they say we could never get them on the phone, they never sent us statements, they never get back to us. Okay, yeah, that's they might have screwed you over. You know what I mean? Like that's something. But again, just them not making money, like you got to look deeper into it because it doesn't always work out. The expectations are ridiculous sometimes, and uh, and it happens across the board. Well, I always joke with David. There'll be at AFM. David is my head of acquisitions. It works for me, and he'll get pitches from a movie, and they want some huge MG, like some ridiculous number. And we always laugh because we'll see him next year. And 50% of the time, I would say they show up the next year and they're like, "Hey, we still got this movie if you're interested." And it's like, okay, now you're back, and you're going to be realistic. And now the movie's a year older, but it's just what it is. So
Yeah, no, funny. They
yeah,
didn't get the memo.
yeah,
So obviously, it's hard not to talk about the landscape and how it's kind of changed, and I know there's a sea of uncertainty, which makes people nervous, but I also have to say that demand has never been higher, supply has been lower, I
hmm
think. So that's the basic business 101
hmm
is a good time. There's a
yeah,
good opportunity. And I think if I had to get excited about something, it's that, is that
yeah,
we're definitely a global international community and you have to think about global sales.
yeah.
But how do you see the landscape changing or has changed for filmmakers in the area of financing and producing. It can go broader, but and you don't need to talk specific, but obviously we had the administration with the tariff announcement. We've had technology changes. We've had, just a litany of things. How do you see the landscape? And you're in LA
Yeah,
now.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the kind of vibe there? What's the feel?
Well, I think, oh, people are always going to want to be making movies and need movies and to escape. So you can take anything as an opportunity. I mean, specifically on the tariffs, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he has any authority there. But I also think that everybody on the Hollywood side, no matter what side you're on, doesn't think that's a good idea. They think that subsidies are a good idea. Everybody
Right.
across the board
Right.
subsidies. In
Give
fact,
money. Right.
yeah, I know the guy that met with the Trump yesterday. This guy, Stephen Paul. I know him. Funny enough, reputation as being completely unscrupulous, but even he said the same thing. Subsidies, meaning I've been saying that for years. I say every freaking other country gives you money to make movies. Every other country except ours, the capital film, they just don't do it. And so that should be it. It's kind of like, just stepping back from the political aspects of anything and just saying, in general, punishment for on something never works as good as positive reinforcement. Like, let's
Absolutely.
reward something if they do it this way instead of punishing if they don't do it this way. And so, hopefully there could be some kind of shakeup and maybe that'll at least get the conversation started on what is needed. But at the same time, there are international co-productions and there are technological advances that are exciting. Like we always thought the most exciting part that's coming up is the dubbing, right? There's AI dubs that
Oh,
are
crazy.
super great now, and they're getting better. And I mean, within a year or two, it's going to be
Oh
click
yeah.
50 languages, and maybe even move my lips to sound Chinese or something
Crazy.
like that. It's like then you could really sell a movie internationally, and that's exciting. So
Yeah, no, I mean, the technology alone is fun to kind of think about to figure out where the industry's headed and those things. Yeah, and you're already seeing that stuff now.
yeah.
Are there any platforms or trends that you think indie filmmakers aren't paying enough attention to? I mean, it's hard not to go AI, but it doesn't need to go in that direction.
Yeah.
Are there any platforms or trends that you think indie filmmakers should be paying more attention to?
Well, especially AVOD, and one of the most money-making AVODs is YouTube, and it's
Yeah,
crazy. Key with
yeah,
that is you have to, you go, oh wow, can I make money on YouTube? Then you put your movie on your own YouTube channel. That's not how you do it. It's like we have three, but really one YouTube partner that makes us a ton of money, but he has 30 million subscribers. You know what I mean? So it's like partner with that. If you want your movie to make money and you got a horror movie, don't just put it up on YouTube. Find one of these horror YouTube sites that has horror movies and say, hey, can you license my movie to put on your site? And I don't think it's the number one solution. And I think that you should have done a TVOD release and a general release beforehand. But that's something, if your movie's just sitting around, why not try to monetize it that way? We had library titles, like meaning movies that we've had for 5 or 6 years that we put on YouTube, and some of them, one of them I saw made $8,000 last month. So it was like that's just fantastic, just great. I mean, so if you can leverage the power of uh, the eyeballs basically, and which is ads, and then you can make some really good money. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, Avon. I don't know that it snuck up on all of us because it was there, and I think, but more people were excited about it. Very few people were excited about it early on and new, I think, and those people now, of course, are laughing because Avon is crushing it.
Crushing it.
Um, you've trained thousands of filmmakers doing filmmaking stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the most common aha moment that you see from your students?
Oof, that's a great question. There's some aha moment. Well, I mean, it depends. I think there's a fun aha moment when they realize they can make their movie and nothing's holding them back. And I've seen it on all different levels. It's like I've seen it where it's a $6 million movie. We already have 2 million in the bank. And it's like, just make the movie for $2 million. And when they kind of have that, oh, wait a minute, we could do that. That's a great feeling. But I think the overall thing that the people that are successful is when they really committed to making the movie and they go, "Oh my God, I'm in production now." Like that's just a great feeling. Like they're shooting something and it's not just talking about it, they're actually doing it. So no matter if it fails or it turns out horrible or it turns out incredible or really successful, they did it. They jumped in the pool. And I think that's a great feeling. When I see that happen, I just love hearing it. So,
Yeah, oh yeah. People know that that's the sizzle really is getting on set, getting on production. And when
oh,
you get into
right.
production, man, there's nothing like
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, you're going to be exhausted at the end of this thing. But if you're a good exhausted, you're a filmmaker. If you're bad exhausted, you should probably find another.
Yeah, yeah. If you're like, I hated that, yeah.
I hated
No, but
that.
if the ones that are, when you do it and you're like, this is great, it
This is
definitely
it.
is so addicting in the best way possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. If you could give any filmmakers one tool or one framework to help them break through,
Hmm.
what would it be? Any thoughts on a tool or framework work?
Well, the key would be a combination of networking and going to the right places. And again, the right places that I've always said are film markets. Because if you can go to these places and be seen around there, people start to think, oh, you're in the business. Like I've had people that I had no idea who they were, but maybe I've seen them three, four markets, and I've been like, oh, this person's doing it. You know what I mean? And I think that immerses you a lot more in in the business itself, right? So the framework should be focus, right? Focus on the business. There's a fun story from when you had um I think it was called the VIP
Mhm. Film
I think yeah,
Summit. Mhm.
the VIP Film Summit. There's all these people there that were wannabe filmmakers, and I had brought, I think you know this story. I brought like a just maybe four or five varieties that I just wanted to read because I was like, oh, finally I can sit around and read on the plane. And the next morning I was there early after our first night there, and I was sitting there, and everybody else walked by, hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? And then the three people, or the two or three that were in the industry, were like, oh, where'd you get the varieties from? And I'm like, no, I brought them myself. And it was like so funny that because that's it, because they had that desire to learn the business. This was a little long ago because now you could just go online and go to Deadline or the dailies is one of my favorite emails. If you haven't signed up, the dailies is a
Great.
3 days a week, yeah, and it gives you all the encapsulation. So the key is always you have to be in the business. So the framework would be if you're living in the middle of nowhere or whatever, not near a major metropolitan city, travel around to these film markets and network and meet people, and then follow up. Follow up is the key to my success. Is I reach back out to everybody, and if I say, "Hey, Ron, let's do coffee," we're gonna do it. Like I'm not just gonna say that because I've had a couple drinks. No, it's like we're gonna actually do coffee and see what can come of that meeting. So, to encapsulate all that, it's go around, be at markets, like immerse yourself in the industry, network, and then follow up with those people.
Yeah, I like it. Definitely like it. What legacy are you most proud of building in this space?
Well, right now, I would say it's definitely so far, it's at least the filmmaking stuff, that we've helped so many people. And like I have this business plan called Movie Plan Pro, and people will come to the markets and pitch me on that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the business plan that I created that you're using. So that's kind of a fun thing. But I'm always trying to get a bigger legacy and better legacy and striving for that. Like we have this big animation that I found over in Hong Kong. And if we could close the deal and finance it or do a huge theatrical release next year, could be an incredible movie because it's like an inside out type movie. And that could be one, but at the same time, this big studio movie. I'm still in search of that hit that people get known for. And I know a lot of partners that are, it's like you can't, there's huge companies, like Highland Film. I remember Highland's one of the big sales companies. It's like I'm looking down their list. I don't know any of their titles. Oh, it's this. So, oh, Russell Crowe's in this and Naomi Watts in that. Never, these aren't monster titles, versus you could point to Voltage, my friends, and it's like they did Hurt Locker, they did Dallas Buyers Club. Okay, those I can point to, you know what I mean? Like, and so I want that hit that everybody can say, "Oh, Tom did that movie," and that's pretty fun. So we'll see. I'm striving for that always.
Yeah, always no. And then I'm sure when you get that, can we do it again? It's always about
Exactly. Just repeat it and repeat it. Exactly.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean, you gamble a little bit or play cards at least from time to time,
I
right?
do. I do. Yeah.
All right, man. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and this is I need Coach Tom to step onto the field. So I get $200,000. What do I do? 200 grand. got it in the bank. What's my
Hmm.
first play? What do I do?
Well, gosh, the key would be if you could. Here's the advice that I would give to you. If you, I mean, just it may not be the exact answer you're looking for, but this would be it. It would be to make five movies at $40,000. I mean, yeah, five movies at $40,000. That would be the best thing I could say. Because then you have five shots to do it. You can learn on a couple. You can learn on four of the five, and the fifth one can make the money that pays back the entire thing. So, uh, if you went, okay, I only want to do one movie, well, then I would say focus on some type of action or thriller type movie or sci-fi. And so keep it genre based, try to get at least one marketable star in there, try to get some IP and go that way. But again, the smarter play would be to do five $40,000 movies and keep them all genre, and you got five shots to make some money.
I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what are you working on right now, and where can people keep an eye on what you're doing?
Well, right now I'm just focused on Cannes because I leave Saturday or Sunday the 11th. Yeah, the 11th I leave Sunday. Um, And so, so we're focused on selling the movies in Glass House. But I have two movies, one called Whiskey Run and another called Orange Justice that I did last year that are coming out. And so this is the first time we're bringing them to market. And we haven't even sold them yet domestically. So I'm excited about those. I have two movies coming up shooting this year. One called Death's Eye that starts, I believe, in about a month and a half shooting, and then another one a little bit later in the summer shooting. So, and at the same time, like I said, this big studio action movie and then this animation movie. So a lot going on, a lot of irons in the fire. Probably the easiest way to find me is just go to filmmaking stuff. And because I do the YouTube channel, we also have, and so YouTube// filmmaking stuff. And so that's free content I give all the time. On the filmmaking stuff site, I give free blogs all the time. Obviously, there's a paid site where people can watch the videos and be a member and all that, but there's also a ton of good free content as well. And so follow me on there and they can find as much as hopefully they need to find to get a career.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And I completely can vouch for that. I mean, I've gone over, I was just on filmmaking stuff yesterday.
Okay.
So the content is great. Tom, again, over delivers. So if you're on the fence, let that be pushing you over on into getting, and there's nothing like being in a community with other like-minded people. You can't do this thing in isolation. And
No, not at all.
I mean life, and I also mean filmmaking. You can't do it in isolation. You're not intended to. If you're going to tell stories, you got to find your tribe. You got to find your people. And filmmaking stuff is pulling together people, training them, equipping them, getting them passionate together. And then if you look to your left and to your right, and those who are running at your pace, that's who you need to connect with. So many of us are trying to go for the stars when we should be looking to our left and to our right. And you
Yeah.
can find those people in a community like Tom has developed at filmmaking stuff. Is there anything that I might have missed or any final words you would tell your younger self when you were first getting into it?
I would say the thing that I would tell my younger self, and this is, I think, believe great advice, is to brand yourself. I never did it as an actor, never did it as a writer, never did it as a producer. You should have just, if you want to do science fiction, only do science fiction. Don't do dramas, comedies, blah, 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 just do one. And so that can hurt your career, but it's completely opposite. If you're the horror guy, you're the bloody horror guy, it's easy for me to put you in a box and go, I got this bloody horror. Ooh, Ron Newcomb's that bloody horror guy. Or you're the rom-com guy, or you're the family drama type guy. Put yourself in that box. Later on, you can expand and do other stuff, but it's best to brand yourself. And it's tough to do because you have to turn down other stuff. But if you can focus on that, eventually it'll pay off.
No, I love that. That's exactly why I do fantasy and sci-fi. It's not that I don't have other genres, it's that I know how to do those. I'm amongst those filmmakers. I know some influencers in that space. I'm
Yeah.
just able to tap into that. So if and when I get a movie like I did with my Rise of the Fellowship film, I got the Lord of the Rings as a part of it. When I sold that film, I was able to mobilize people like that,
Awesome.
because they're easily definable.
Yep.
So, well, I appreciate you, Tom, jumping on here, man, and
Yeah.
helping me out and kind of bringing us through and walking us through a little bit of your journey. So, for you all, thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment just to let me know you're out there and stuff. But I believe we're good to conclude our time with Tom Malloy over at Filmmaking Stuff. Go check him out. Please support him. Extremely knowledgeable guy, very giving guy, and actually a guy doing it. There's so many people that I cannot vouch for. Tom is not one of them. I can vouch for. So just remember, nothing is wasted. Thanks for watching.